This is the end of the beginning. Welcome to today's show. This is great news from the Rolling Stone magazine or Yahoo News or the mainstream media that's covering it about how AI, artificial intelligence, could reincarnate your dead grandparents. Or on the flip side, it could wipe out your kids. But it's both one and the same, of course, and they're talking about artificial intelligence. And nobody asks what it is, how it's created, what's really going on there, but I'll explain it all to you because you're not really talking to your reincarnated dead grandparents. You're talking to spirits and demons, and they're using technology to normalize this stuff, all in the name of technology, and it couldn't be less or further from the truth. I'll show you that later in the video, but I love how they talk about this stuff and nobody's like, yeah, that might be a problem. Maybe, they're talking about wiping out our kids using artificial intelligence. I mean, do people not see the mental health problems that these people have in the world, these kids have in the world, all because of their dependence on technology, all because not just factoring in the 5G, which is technology technically. So nobody notices this stuff and wants to do something about limiting technology, limiting artificial intelligence. Said they want to enhance it up to the point where it's actually going to wipe out and kill your kids like a T2. Does that sound like a normal society? Because that's what we're living in. But they make it positive. So they're like, well, it might wipe out our kids, so that could be an issue, even though there's a lot of people that wouldn't mind kids getting wiped out because they're so sick mentally in this world. In fact, some people support it and they call it their body, their choice. But on the flip side, of course, from wiping out your kids is a positive spin. You could talk to your dead grandparents, because that's what we all want to do every day. We think about our dead grandparents or our dead family members or dead friends, and wouldn't it be great if we could talk to them? Oh, no, I don't think so, because it wouldn't really be them. It would actually be demons taking on the form of our deceased relatives, and the Bible warns about talking to mediums. There's many verses in the Bible about it. Leviticus talks about it. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 31. Where it states, regard not them that have familiar spirits, neither seek after wizards to be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. Familiar spirits, as in a familiar relative who's not really your relative. I mean, it's almost like Pet Cemetery in a sense, right? You bury your cat in the pet cemetery. People are like, I'm going to bury my cat so my cat comes back, right? And what comes back? Well, it's not really your cat. It's an evil spirit that's taken over your cat, right? But there's so much predictive programming about this stuff. But I'm going to show you this. And again, this isn't the first time we've heard about this type of technology. They're promoting it. They're preparing people for it. We've even seen stories about how Alexa is going to be doing the same thing and how all these big tech companies are going to use artificial intelligence for the weak-minded people out there that need to talk to grandma, who passed away 30 years ago. And I get it. I mean, we all mourn and miss people in our lives who have passed. But obviously the Bible talks about forbidding this type of thing and speaking with mediums. I mean, you see all these Christians, they go on these shows with mediums who are like, oh, your grandma's in the room, your spirit. I mean, I personally, the only time I find it amusing is if anyone's ever seen The Sopranos. I can't play the clip in here, but when Paulie goes to see the medium and he's like, sees all the people that Paulie's whacked because he was in the mob. And of course, what ends up happening is pretty hilarious, but you can't say it or show it here because it's hate speech, but you could look that up yourself. And I remember that off the top of my head when I was younger and I saw Sopranos, and, I don't really promote any of those mainstream type of shows, but it was funny because I've always despised mediums and psychics. It's a ripoff and a scam. But all these people always use what? They use tarot cards. They summon spirits. This is all witchcraft and sorcery. The Bible warns us about this again. But artificial intelligence, again, to normalize these things, they're going to start using, they're going to be like, well, we probably, when people go, we should avoid and we need to, put regulations in place about the dangers of artificial intelligence. Like this article says, like it's going to kill your kids, but then they just give you this little thing on the other side of it where people are like, oh, I could talk to my dead relatives, and they get sucked in, and they're like, yeah, so there's some benefits of artificial intelligence when there's none, and take a look at what they're planning to do, and of course, keep an eye on some of the trigger terminology used, like being immortal, living forever, because this all ties in with the mark of the beast as well.
Imagine you could live forever, or maybe go back in time and ask your parents, grandparents, great-grandparents about their lives, their experiences. Well, that's now a possibility thanks to a new concept called Storyfile, and it's powered by, you guessed it, AI. Take a look.
I'm so pleased that I met so many good people who influenced my life, and I had
This is Marina Smith responding in video and interacting with her loved ones.
And I feel it's coming to conclusion.
Sounds like a pretty normal video chat conversation, except for one thing. This is her funeral. The video you see here is generated by AI.
And I've seen my sons doing great things and leading.
She was the mother of Stephen Smith, creator and CEO of Storyfile.
My co-founder and wife were concerned about the preservation of Holocaust survivors. How do we ensure that important piece of history is preserved for future generations? We wanted to be able to have a conversation with the past. I hadn't planned to bring my mother's Storyfile to her funeral. We buried her and then everyone got around and was saying beautiful things about her. And towards the end of it, I said, I'd love to ask Mother a few questions. And everybody just, there's Marina. And her smile and her personality, the one that everybody was missing in that moment.
What's your story?
My name is Hank Thomas, former freedom rider.
Through an extensive library of content fed in by the user, Storyfile uses real-life expressions, mannerisms, and even accents to generate high-definition video responses.
You ask a set of questions. The person answers those questions. And in the answers are lots of things that are not the original question. You could ask me, where were you born? And I will say, I was born in Derby, England. Oh, and by the way, that's the home of Rolls-Royce, and they have an amazing soccer team. And then suddenly I'm talking about other things other than where I was born. So what the AI is doing actually, it's not creating new content. What it's doing is looking through all the content that's there and then bringing back from that content what you're looking for.
Actor and comedian William Shatner created his own Storyfile, and you can interact with him on the company's website.
For all time.
All right, now let's put this AI technology to the test. I'm going to ask a couple of questions to this machine and see what it can do. What is your name?
My name is William Shatner.
Fair. How about, how old are you?
So I was born in 1931, and you do the math.
Okay, fair enough. Very direct. Let's try something more complicated. How about, what do you think about AI technology?
This whole thing is the future. To be able to ask a favorite person, present day,
No, that's impressive.
even
Now you might be wondering, how safe is it?
Every story file is private by default. You can share it. There's a link, you can put it on your Facebook if you want. Everybody can share it, but we assume that it's private so that you've got the confidence to be able to speak about those things that are, intimate and personal.
As for what the future of AI looks like,
What we have seen in the last 6 months is so revolutionary and so fast, breakneck speed fast. I can't predict what's going to happen at the end of this year, let alone 5 or 10 years from now.
Smith also pointed out that just like all new technology, there will be a learning curve all across the board, from the music and film industries to the news industry and even to our day-to-day lives. But he hopes and believes that with the right guidelines in place, life could be much easier and longer thanks to AI. What a time to be alive. In studio, Giovanni Diaz, Pix 11 News.
Tony, we're gonna kick it off with you, baby.
I hear your voice today. I hear the songs being sung here, and I'm talking about voices because my talk of the table is about a controversial new feature from Amazon. I'm not going to tell you exactly why it's controversial. I just want to have you listen to a little kid ask Alexa to get a story read by Grandma. This was at a conference just recently. Take a look, and then I'll explain.
Okay.
Alexa, can Grandma finish reading me The Wizard of Oz?
Okay. But how about my courage? Asked the lion anxiously. You have plenty of courage, I am sure, answered Oz.
Grandma in this scenario is no longer with us. And Alexa, with this new technology, you see why it's controversial.
Yeah,
I don't like it.
Alexa is creating,
I
can
don't
create
like it.
anyone's voice.
So you can have your dead relative
Yes.
engaged. I don't like
Why
it.
don't you like it?
I don't like I
If
think
you're
it's
if you're
creepy.
a child and you're missing your relative and you want to hear that voice, why not?
That creeps me out. That doesn't creep you out? That creeps me out. When my mom died, I saved the answering machine. Back in the day, we had answering machines.
Yeah.
So I saved the answering machine where she said, "This is Peggy King. You've reached out."
A lot of people do that.
I've saved it.
Yeah.
And then I let it go. But to have her her voice reading like she's there is creepy to me.
But some people don't want to let that go. Some people want that to last
I
forever.
can understand that. I think a recording.
I'm seeing both sides.
Okay, well, I want to see your side. Do you like this idea?
If I could hear the voice of a grandparent that I never had a chance to meet, like a couple of my grandparents, I would love to hear them talk to me.
I don't like it.
But it's a creation. It's an AI creation.
It's an AI
not a recording.
It's artificial intelligence.
Out.
You take the voice and then they figure out a way to allow Alexa to mimic that voice.
I'll bet people agree with both of us, Nate.
Yeah.
That they do.
So yeah, that's not frightening. And of course, Alexa as well. All of these types of devices that people are bringing into their homes. Soon they'll be imprisoned in their homes. They'll be imprisoned in their homes. And then they'll be like, oh, it's a big deal. I got the Alexa. I could talk to grandma. All right? These people are just, I mean, it's really unbelievable. Look, I'm going to read the article. Then I'm going to show you how this ties into summoning spirits, bringing over what's on the other side. We have quantum computers. We have these guys that constantly are talking about what quantum computers really are, what they're really trying to do, which is summon demons. And then people are like, oh, this guy's crazy. He believes in demons. All this stuff. These are some of the richest people on the planet who are talking about this stuff. They're at TED Talk. They're at all these places talking about it. And this dumbed down audience is just like, they don't even realize what they're saying because they're not in the spiritual war. They don't understand any of the stuff going on in the spiritual war because they're living in the Matrix. They're living in Naiveville or whatever you want to call it. They're living in an alternate reality. And that's what they're trying to convince people of, living in this world, living in this alternate reality that they're creating through the media, through technology, where people can't actually see this as a spiritual war going on. Okay, but first let's take a look at this article that's talking about how we could talk to our dead relatives and, of course, talk to grandma, and don't worry about them wiping out your kids. So it says, when, not if, robots destroy humanity in the next few decades, they won't resemble the Terminator, says Eliezer Yudkowsky, the leading pioneer of artificial intelligence who now believes we're doomed. Oh, that's great. I love how this is just like in Yahoo, and people are just like, it's not a big deal. So Yudkowsky is 43, balding, and with a dark beard and glasses. Over Zoom in Seattle, he wears a loose-fitting, long-sleeve gray polo shirt and a cloak of despair. For the past 20 years, he's been a lead researcher at the Berkeley-based Machine Intelligence Research Institute, a nonprofit dedicated to creating what he calls friendly AI, artificial intelligence that aligns with the ethics and morals of human beings. He's considered one of the field's most influential theorists. This makes his prediction sound like the stuff of a madman or a prophet. The killer machines of the future, he tells me, will likely be, get this, nanoscopic bots tiny enough to infiltrate all matter, including us. Now, does that sound familiar about something going on right now where you hear the word nano, right? Nanoparticles, nano this, nano that. Right? Well, a lot of us have been screaming about it, so much so that I know another YouTuber lost like 40 channels over talking about nanotechnology and how they can get it in your body. I mean, if you're not thinking at this point, how could they get nanotechnology into our bodies? Nanobots? I don't know. Let's think real clearly. How are they accessing your body right now? How can they get nanoscopic bots in there? So this guy says that nanoscopic bots tiny enough to infiltrate all matter, including us. He says the AI can employ superbiology against you. That sounds familiar too. Picture intelligent bots spewing out clouds of tiny bacteria made of diamond, he says, made of just carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen so that they can reproduce in the atmosphere using sunlight for energy. They spread across the world. They hide in your bloodstream. How would they get in your bloodstream? I have no idea. Nano getting into your blood? Anybody know? I'm not sure. And at some point, the same second, everybody on Earth just immediately falls over dead. That's what I would say should be like the prototypical visualization rather than fighting Terminator armies. Yeah, that sounds about right. Got to agree with this guy. Somehow getting nanotech into people's bloodstream. Again, no idea at all how it could hide in there, because I have no idea how it could ever get in your bloodstream. And then they go on to say this is some Black Mirror stuff. And it should be known that this guy does write fan fiction for fun. Oh, okay. So that's supposed to discredit him. He's writing fan fiction because this guy, I mean, he's no different than any of all of us, really. Any of us who talk about this stuff all the time, right? So, they say, but they're using him clearly because they want to say, well, he writes fan fiction, so he's out of his mind, right? Or like they do to us, and they say, we're conspiracy theorists, so we don't know what we're talking about. Right. We've only all called this stuff for years that's happening right now, and everyone called us crazy then, and then we thought, maybe when it all happened, they would actually wake up and we could do something about it, but they still call us conspiracy theorists because they love their mind control. So he said he leads a fringe of AI doomers, He says, the crazy it sounds, not crazy anymore. AI has been deeply entrenched in our lives for years, from voice assistants such as Siri and Alexa to the algorithms with Taylor, that tailor our feeds online. Everything changed in November with OpenAI's ChatGPT, the free chatbot that lets you have human-like convos with a super smart AI. Since then, every day brings new possibilities for AI's disruption of our jobs, our bodies, and our minds. While writing an AI-assisted wedding toast seems remote enough, the bigger question remains, where, if anywhere, is this going? Much is promising. Programmers using AI to write code that would take them months. Hospitals employing AI to successfully screen for breast cancer. Amateurs generating mind-blowing art, music, and poetry with AI. So in other words, we don't need humans anymore. Everything can be improved with AI. The article even goes on to mention our friends at the World Economic Forum, saying our new powers and improved efficiency are, by one estimate, set to create nearly 100 million jobs, according to the World Economic Forum's jobs report, because, we elected these people, so they should be giving us jobs reports just like the government. Oh, right, they're our real government, the World Economic, they're the world government. Okay. But the potential is also bringing untold upheaval. 300 million jobs lost, 300 million. Okay, and I've talked about this for years. This is something that should unite humanity, no matter what your politics are. And that's what's really drove me nuts over the years with my channel, is that people, they're like, oh, he shouldn't have a channel, demonetize, all this stuff. And it's like, you should never mess with the way somebody earns a living, right? So if somebody's a liberal, but they're like a UPS driver, like, why would I want them to lose their job? They got to eat, they got to pay for their home or wherever they're living, and they might have kids, right? But we live in a world now with just rabid, unhinged people. So they don't care about other people making money. They don't care about other people trying to just feed their family. You never mess with somebody's family. That's a numero uno. You don't mess with how somebody earns, okay? Unless they're doing like something really sick, like all the people in our government are doing. Well, then that's fine. You can mess with that because they're doing all sorts of acts underground with what and how they're trafficking. So the jobs report thing should be something that makes people go, hey, you know what? We shouldn't be giving our jobs to drones. We shouldn't be giving our waitress jobs to robots. We shouldn't be taking it away where people could just touch a screen at a restaurant now instead of actually using a waitress or scanning a code. No, but everybody's on board with it. They're like, yeah, because everybody's grown cold of one another and can't stand one another. So the article just goes on to talk about how AI is going to have pros and cons, of course. And they say intelligence will surpass humans by the year 2045. Well, that's not necessarily true, of course, because people like me and you are not going to be surpassed by Johnny 5. I don't care what they say and what they do. We'll change the language, everything they learn. We'll be ahead of them. We'll be a step ahead. Kind of like how the New World Order has this game we're in the middle of. They're the ones who dictate the game. It's their game. So they're always going to be ahead of us because they know what they're doing and what's coming next, and we have to wait to see what it is, right? We're not on the inside, but we could obviously work our way around it, work our way through it. Same with technology. They're like, oh, it's going to surpass humans. Well, of course it's already going to surpass humans at this point. Look how stupid most people are. It's never going to surpass me and you, ever. Those of us with the Holy Spirit, it will never surpass us. We'll always be able to outsmart these demons. And speaking of demons, I'm now going to show you what's very important. I've used this before. I just watched it again, and I've seen it like a dozen times, and every time you learn new stuff. But this is our friend Gordy Rose, who's a foul-mouthed demon who is responsible, and of course our government funds his ridiculous business of summoning spirits into the world, really, where they call them quantum computers. And he tells you how dangerous they are, but how great it is. That these quantum computers are going to look at us like we look at ants and spiders, and they're just going to squash us. And this guy somehow is not in a prison cell. Now, this video might get flagged because every time I put this clip in, Jordy Rose usually puts a claim in, so I try to alter the speed and all those things, so maybe you won't see it, but that's the only reason the video is a little bit blurred, just to try to avoid how the algorithm will send Gordy an update that the clip is in there so Gordy could take it down, because Gordy doesn't want you figuring out what's really going on, even though Gordy's flat out telling us what's going on. And as you'll see, the zombies in the crowd are oohing and ahhing as he's pretty much saying, well, artificial intelligence, what we're doing is opening a black hole and bringing over demons from the other side, and they're going to squash you like ants. And they're like, oh, great. Honey, pass the popcorn. Keep going, Gordy. Oh, wait, what? What? Oh, right. Pay attention to the stuff that Gordy says, because there's truth behind it. And if this video is removed, it'll be available on my website, uprisingrevival.com. I'll probably put it up over there anyway with my library of videos. But here's Gordy. You figure it out for yourself if you haven't yet. And if you've seen this clip before, I recommend you watch it again. Here's the frightening reality of what's going on.
So, I'm the President of the United States. So I received this message from the heavens. So my microwave dish, my SETI dish, finally captures something. And what it says is, in 50 years, or 13 years, we're coming to your planet. You gotta be ready. Now just imagine what would happen if that happened. A super intelligent alien race beamed down a message to all of us Earthlings saying, we're coming July 13th, 2030, and boy, you better be ready because the mothership is landing right on the front lawn of the White House or wherever you wanted to land on that day. The amount of resources that would be marshaled to try to figure out what to do would encompass the whole world. AI is just like that. So when this thing that I'm talking about happens, it's going to be exactly the thing that you're thinking about those super intelligent AIs. So the one thing I can tell you is they're not going to be like us. So alien means, different. These things that we're building are not going to be people. They might be really smart, they might be really good at all sorts of different things, but they're not going to be like us. They're going to be aliens. And they're going to be, I'm sorry to say, way smarter than every single person in this room. So this is an attitude that some are having, this emerging alarmism about the way this is going to go. But these words, demons, doesn't capture the essence of what's happening here. I don't know if any of you are turn-of-the-century weird fiction fans, but there's this guy named H.P. Lovecraft, who's a very famous American weird fiction author. And he espoused a view which is called cosmicism. And the essence of cosmicism is cosmic indifference. So what he was saying is basically, yes, there are these massively intelligent entities out there, but they're not good, they're not evil. They just don't give a shit about you even in the slightest. The same way that you don't care about an ant is the same way they're not going to care about you. And these things that we're summoning into the world now are not demons, they're not evil, but they're more like the Lovecraftian great old ones. There are entities that are not necessarily going to be aligned with what we want. So this transition is really, really massively important for our entire species to navigate. And going back to that thing that Sam Harris was saying, nobody is paying attention. This thing is happening in the background while people bicker about politics and what's going to be in the healthcare plan in the US. And underneath it all is this rising tsunami that, if we're not careful, is going to wipe us all out.
But before I do that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about quantum computers and why people care so much about them. There are literally tens of thousands of some of the brightest people in the world today trying to build these machines and understand them. And I'm going to tell you why. In my last 15 years of working on this type of stuff, I found that scientists divide up into two categories of zealots about this field. The first half are people who are absolutely entranced by the physics of these things. This quote is from a respectable scientist, in fact, one of the founders of this field, that may look a little strange to you who don't follow theoretical physics, but there is a very clear prediction that our most successful theory of nature makes, and that is that there are an enormous number, mind-bogglingly large number, of parallel realities, as real as this one, that have different consistent histories. So imagine a world where all of the laws of physics as we know them are obeyed, but different decisions were made along the way. Different decisions at the level of tiny microscopic particles, different decisions all the way up to what you chose to eat for lunch and whether you chose to come to this session or not. Quantum mechanics makes a very specific prediction that all of those are as real as the thing that you remember. And this is bizarre because we don't see those other things. But science has reached the point now where we can build machines that exploit those other worlds. And quantum computers are perhaps the most exciting of all of these that we have within, or almost within our grasp right now. So people from a physics background love this. They want to understand the world. They want to understand the universe, how it all works. There's another type of person who tends to come from the computer science side that's like, yeah, okay, that's all great. But there's a different thing going on here, which is just as exciting, if not more, and that these machines that supposedly can do this wild stuff, let's forget about how they work, if you could build one, could solve problems that you could never, ever solve with any computer of the sort that we built. If you took every single atom of silicon in the world and made the most sophisticated conventional Intel-style processor that you could build, there are problems we know of that I could write down on a sheet of paper that you could never, ever, ever solve with that thing, that you could with this kind of machine. So that's very exciting. Humans use tools to do things. If you give humans a new kind of tool that can do things that you couldn't otherwise do, imagine the possibilities. So you may think, well, this is all fine and dandy, but aren't these things in the realm of theory and speculation kind of in the same regime as other futuristic things you may have heard of which may be allowed by the laws of physics but aren't here yet? That's not true. There are, in fact, many of these machines deployed now in openly available research centers following the model that was used to introduce supercomputers to the world. They're too big and ornery and difficult to operate to put in your home, too expensive also, but you can give them to a place which will manage them as a shared resource that will offer that service to the world. And there are two of these now. One of them is at the University of Southern California. So these types of computers now are being thought of in the same way. They're not terrifically powerful yet, but they're doing something completely different than what your computer does. And that thing is like flight. It gives these computers access to these new resources, maybe you could call them parallel universes, in order to do something that you couldn't otherwise do. Steve Jurvetson has been a longtime friend and investor in the company, and for those of you who don't know him, he's a Silicon Valley investor who's probably the smartest VC that I know of, and certainly the one that's the most attuned to technological trends. He's on the board of SpaceX, Tesla, Synthetic Genomics, which is Craig Venter's company that's trying to build artificial life, and D-Wave, and that's it. And this is his particularly poetic way of framing the difference between the machines we build and conventional computers. This is what they look like. There are two of them. These are from our lab in Burnaby in British Columbia. From the outside, they look like giant black monoliths, big metal boxes, about 10 feet on a side, 12 feet tall. And they are powered, they have a fridge inside them, a refrigerator that cools these chips to almost absolute zero. Just a wisp, a fraction of a degree above absolute zero. Hundreds of times colder than interstellar space. Amongst the coldest and most isolated and extreme conditions that humans have ever been able to engineer. These fridges, interestingly enough, which are called pulse tube dilution refrigerators, have a thing called a pulse tube, which emits a sound roughly once per second, which sounds eerily like a heartbeat. So if you have the opportunity to stand next to one of these machines it is an awe-inspiring thing, at least for me. It feels like an altar to an alien god. They really are impressive machines. At the heart of this big box is a tiny chip about the size of your thumbnail. And on this chip resides all of the wonder and magic that makes this thing go. I'm not going to describe in any mathematical detail how it all works, but let me give you an analogy. In quantum mechanics, there's this concept that a thing can exist in two states which are mutually exclusive at the same time, quote unquote. And I'm using those words because the English language was developed before we had concepts to describe what these things actually are doing. But I'm going to give you a roundabout way of understanding this. Imagine that there really are parallel universes out there, and now imagine you have two that are exactly identical in every respect, all the way out to the horizon as far as we can see, down to the last little atomic detail of every single thing, with only one difference. And that's the value of a little thing called a qubit on this chip, which is a contraction of quantum bit. And that qubit is very much like a bit or a transistor in a conventional computer. It has two distinct physical states, which we call 0 and 1 for bit. In the conventional computer, these are mutually exclusive. That device is either one or the other and never anything else. In a quantum computer, that device can be in this strange situation where these two parallel universes have a nexus, a point in space where they overlap. And when you increase the number of these devices, every time you add one of these qubits, you double the number of these parallel universes that you have access to, until such time when you get to a chip like this, which has about 500 of these bits, you have something like 2 to the 500th power of these guys living.
Looks like fun, right? How they're doing this stuff, they're putting this into the chips, and everyone they don't think. They're just like, oh, AI, I have a phone. I'm not wondering how this technology is working, how it could be affecting my health with these towers that are going up. Because they just don't think. They don't understand things that they can't see, and everything that they see that they're shown from the mainstream media is nothing but lies. So that's why their reality is completely twisted, because they're literally living in the upside down. All they know is what the media and the television tells them, which is nothing. It's just an information flow of lies. It's an information flow of narcissism, making these people just absolutely obsessed with themselves. They don't realize that all of their behavior is controlled through the media. You know, from everything as small as like these people taking selfies to people uploading pictures of what they're eating. They don't realize why they're even doing it because they're on autopilot. And this is exactly what the problem is with this world. They won't wake up to what's really going on. That's why you see the majority of the audience there kind of just going, oh, cool, right? You think 100 years ago, if somebody was saying this type of stuff, that they wouldn't have charged the stage and been like, this guy needs to be thrown in prison. These ideas are sick. This is sick. What is his plan here? We're all humans. We don't want this demon technology. No. This guy wouldn't have made it 3 seconds. He would have been speared off the stage. But in today's world, what is he? Well, he's an untouchable billionaire. He's somebody who's, that we're told is smarter than we are. But we all who have discernment can see exactly what Gordy's talking about. So, ladies and gentlemen, you could talk to your dead grandparents, and AI could also kill your kids. So you figure out the pros and cons of that. I mean, this is just getting absurd. A reminder, please subscribe to my other channels if you haven't yet. They are linked below. I want to thank everyone out there who's a Patreon who supports the work of this channel. If you think this work is worth anything, you don't have to think it is, but please consider becoming a Patreon. It helps me make more content like this video. It gives me time to do it, so the Patrons are greatly appreciated. Patrons, whatever the word is. The link is below. Thanks to everyone who already has contributed. And of course, the website, uprisingrevival.com. Check it out if you haven't yet. At the very least, go sign up for free videos. Where you can be on a mailing list. That way we can all stay in touch with each other when this channel's terminated, because we know it's coming sooner than later. Thanks again, everybody. Hope you're doing well. God bless all of you and your families.